Ulysses in the Odyssey. Ulysses, or Odysseus. He went through a multitude of trials, and just this myth alone could fill an entire lecture, it must be said. But this particular moment, which is of special interest to us here, is when he was about to pass through a place filled with sirens. Sirens are quite the dangerous creatures. As you know, you're familiar with the story. They sing and lure human beings down to the depths of the water. In water, you remember it's not good. Waters represent materialism. These are the voices that drag humanity toward matter. And he was about to pass through there. He knew he would, but he wanted to face this trial. So you see that he gathers his men, who, logically, represent different aspects of himself, right? He puts wax in his men's ears and covers them with a cloth, a band, so that they cannot hear the sirens. But he wanted to listen and to resist. So he tells his men, "Tie me to the mast. Tie me tightly. And if I scream, roar, or struggle, do not untie me. I want to hear the sirens, and I want to resist." And so it was done. Off he went, and the sirens began to sing. Sirens, in this case with the bodies of birds, but the symbolism remains the same, luring him, singing, and he, frantic, desperate. But he does not yield, nor allow swept away. Why? Why? Because he is tied to the mast. What could this mean? Remember just a moment ago when we asked, how can Arthur overcome Lancelot in the moment of morning laziness? If you are tied to the vertical mast of your principles, of your values. The vertical mast, carries the same symbolism as the fire I mentioned to you, the verticality of your principles. No matter how much the voices of the world may sing, I am voluntarily tied to my principles, and I do not allow myself to be swept away. In other words, I impose. It is like that person who lets themselves be guided by the hand of Athena. I impose principles over the voices that try to pull me in any direction, and these voices are, in general, internal voices. But no, this is not noble. This is not just. This is not good. This does not lead to unity. This does not help me grow. This does not help those around me to grow, so no. No matter how beautiful and pleasant these voices may be. Curiously, this scene shows that Ulysses was what? A philosopher. He was not a sage. Why is it, then, that we can come to this conclusion? More than simply ignoring them, he, as a philosopher, must impose principles because the voices attract him. He cannot defeat the sirens. So he must impose principles over an action, over a tempting voice. If he were a sage, he would defeat the sirens. Sirens gone. There is only one way to defeat the siren. What is it? Who knows this one? It's well known in mythology. How does one overcome a siren? No one knows. It's not possible. You really don't know? By singing better than they do. That's the only way. Can you imagine if they encountered a siren and didn't know this? By singing better than they do. And there is only one being that sings better than the sirens, and that is the human soul. Just like Rapunzel when she starts to sing, remember? The human soul, when it sings better than the sirens. It drives the sirens away, the voice of the human soul. And a wise person has a soul that sings. It is the song of life spoken of in various traditions of the past. It is the same as the Eastern tradition that speaks of Dharma. It is the song of life that guides you on the path of Dharma. The soul of the wise sings and drives away the siren. He no longer needs to tie himself to anything. He is capable of banishing the sirens. But he is still a philosopher, that is, he binds himself to the vertical mast of his principles. And what does the ordinary person tie themselves to? To a multitude of things that will drag them into the world of the sirens. Isn't that so? The sirens don't even need to sing. It's a waste of song. He already goes by himself, puff, he dives in. Isn't that so? Because he's so attached to what exists only within the material world that he doesn't even need great temptations. He finds fulfillment right there, you see? So, when we're able to impose principles over vulgar, superficial, and trivial voices, in that moment, we are Ulysses, aren't we? One day our soul will sing, and we will be wise. And the philosopher loves and dreams of this moment. Icarus and Daedalus, how did that story go? That was a long story, full of dramatic twists, and it even connects to that Minotaur we saw at the beginning. I won't skip over that whole part. The truth is that Daedalus was a marvelous architect, and he did something that was not good. and the king of the island where he lived, which was the island of Crete, King Minos, obviously wanted to catch him. And since he was such a skilled architect, a marvelous, mythical builder, right? He couldn't use the boats, because the boats belonged to the king. So how could he escape from this island, fleeing from the king, without using the king's boats? He came up with the idea of making wings. And of course, he was in a hurry, with the king hot on his trail. He used whatever materials he had at hand. He gathered many feathers, many bird plumes, and wax, that was all he had. And he built wings for himself and for his son Icarus. He crafted very good wings. He was truly skilled, very capable. It was perfectly possible to cross the Aegean and reach the mainland, but they couldn't fly too high because the wings were made of wax and the sun would melt them. He carefully explained to his son, "My son, do not fly too high. It won't work." And the boy, full of eagerness, replied, "All right, Dad, I understand." Children often have this habit of saying that to their parents, don't they? When you look closely, they haven't really understood much, but anyway, let's not get lost in these details of the story. The fact is, Icarus said he understood, but he really hadn't. When they begin to fly over the ocean, he starts wanting to soar too high, enchanted by the sun. Imagine a human being flying, that radiant sun shining above. He is captivated and wants to fly higher. Don't fly too high, son. Until inevitably the sun melts his wings, puff, he falls into the ocean. And then what? What could we learn from this passage of the myth? A brief passage about wanting to fly too high with wings made of wax. All of us have very legitimate dreams of wanting to soar high, but we don't stop to consider whether our wings are made of wax, do we? For example, a practical example of this is the fantasy of having solid relationships and a stable life, without having cultivated the values that support such things. I find it funny, for example, when I give a talk on soulmates, there's a line of people at the end asking me if their boyfriend or girlfriend is their soulmate. This is killer. I don't even give this talk anymore. Everyone dreams of soulmates, of very elevated loves, but they think that these things don't have an infrastructure of maturity, of self-construction, that you have to be able to handle it. They think they can have it with wings of wax. You can't make very high flights with wings of wax. Everything in life requires certain virtues, certain conditions. It requires that you build yourself. Otherwise, it won't work. Love is a typical example of this. For those who have watched my talk on platonic love, I always talk about this. It is very common, and this is also an old example, to see people saying they want to find the perfect match, the perfect partner. And I compare it to someone who wants to make perfect drawings. Do you know this story? A young person comes to you and says, "I want to draw like Leonardo da Vinci." You say, "Wow, what a wonderful dream," right? What are you going to do? Then I will prepare myself. I will draw like Leonardo da Vinci. All right. 5 years go by, 10 years, and you meet this young person again. So, how is it? Did you change your mind? No, I still want to. Of course I do. But what are you doing? Are you studying drawing? No. Are you studying painting? No, but then how is it going to happen? Well, but that's not necessary. You just need to look like the right person. When a clone of the Mona Lisa shows up, I will paint her exactly the same. Do you think that if a clone of the Mona Lisa appears, what will he paint? Typically, it's the story of the little circle with 2 eyes and the enigmatic smile. It won't go beyond that. Why? She may be perfect, but he is not prepared. Notice this. So for all things in life that you wish to be truly noble, you must be prepared, you must have the structure for it. For everything, for genuine feelings, for deep relationships, for dreams fulfilled, you have to build yourself. It cannot be with wings of wax. It is a series of elements that we must build within ourselves: security, sensitivity to others, fraternity, many things that need to be established as a foundation so that we can take a bolder flight. Otherwise, it won't work. Only low flights, mere survival, relationships that are sometimes more about entertainment than anything else, only misunderstandings. High flights are not possible. You need to have human wings, wings that carry you closer to your dreams. They cannot be made of wax. Do you understand? To grow? Remember what Plato says, the best thing we can do for the people we love or wish to love is to grow as human beings. To conquer the foundations, wax wings will not suffice.